Hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my October wrap-up. Okay, so the first book I read in October was Mickey 7, which was the first book in the Mickey 7 duology, I want to say. Even though when I started reading the book, I thought it was a standalone, but apparently it isn't. And this was a science fiction novel, and basically in this book we follow Mickey 7, and he is part of a team, like space exploration sort of thing, and his job is to basically do the hardest, like most dangerous, probably fatal jobs, because he can be replaced, he can be recreated. That's why he's Mickey 7, like he is the seventh version of Mickey, the original guy who signed up for that job. And so he is, like, in the beginning of the book, they are on a mission. Mickey is doing like his dangerous tasks, and he gets stuck in a place, and like he basically is dying. And so he tells the other people who are there on the mission with him that, he's dying. So the others leave him there and go back to their spaceship, and basically, like, they all assume that Mickey died, so Mickey 8 is created. But apparently, Mickey 7 did not die, and he gets back to the spaceship as well. And now there are two Mickeys, which is a problem because that is not allowed. And basically, the book is about how they try to fix that situation. And honestly, this book like stressed me out because I was worried about Mickey 7. Mickey 8, not really, because even though they're supposed to be the same person, they weren't. And I did not care about Mickey 8. Maybe it was because we were following Mickey 7 and I didn't really ever get to connect to Mickey 8. But I really liked Mickey 7. I didn't want anything bad to happen to him. And so I was stressed out with this book. But I really liked it. The plot was very interesting. It was very fast-paced. And like I said, I love the main character. I am actually really excited that there is going to be another book in the series. And it was a lot of fun. And I gave this one 4.5 stars. Now, the next 4 books I'm going to be talking about were part of a reading vlog. So if you want to hear my more thoughts about them, I will link it in the description and also up there. And the first one was Foe by Ian Reid, and this was a science fiction horror. And honestly, I just wanted to read this book because last year I read I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and I absolutely love this, which was by the same author. So I just wanted to read more books from this author. And so basically in this book we follow Junior, who lives with his wife, and then one day a guy gets to their house. I think the guy's name was Torrance, but I might be wrong. He gets to their house and he basically tells them that Junior was selected for a mission in space and that he will have to be gone. Just only him, only Junior, even though he didn't exactly apply for anything. He was just chosen out of the blue, which was weird to begin with. And then everything continued to be weird. Like that guy, Torrance, he was very strange. And then he and Junior's wife, they seemed like they knew each other, but they said that they didn't. And then even Junior and his wife started acting strange. And everything in this book was so weird, which was exactly what I wanted from it. And for the most part, it was mostly not a lot of plot, just vibes. But the vibes were very uncomfortable and unsettling, which I do like. And then the plot twists or reveal towards the end was crazy, and I really liked it. And so, like I said, I really like books that make me feel uncomfortable and give me a feeling of there is something wrong the whole time. So if you also like those books, I definitely recommend this one, and I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read The Boatman's Daughter, and this was another horror book, but this was more fantasy horror. And in this book, we followed Miranda, who is the boatman's daughter, and she is dealing with some bad people because of, not her choice. It wasn't her choice to be in that position, but she is there. And they're also a witch in this book, and a child that is in a way connected to Miranda. And basically we just follow Miranda throughout all the horrible things that happen to her and to the people that she likes. And honestly, I'm gonna start with what I did like in this book, which was the supernatural fantasy part. but there really wasn't that much of it. And then what I didn't like, I actually didn't really like the writing style to begin with, which I guess might have been a reason as to why I did not like anything else. Basically, so I also didn't like the characters. Like, everyone was horrible, and I get that that was the point, but sometimes that works for me, sometimes it doesn't, and in this particular case it didn't. And even the main character, Miranda, she was not like a bad person, but I never connected to her, I never cared about her, so I was not, worried about any of the horrible things that were potentially happening to her or the people that she liked. I never ever cared. And also, I wouldn't exactly classify this book as horror, at least for the majority of it. I would say it was more of a thriller. And, when I read horror, I like my horror to be more like not real life horror, you know what I mean? Not like just like bad people doing bad things. That is not the type of horror I tend to like, but that is just a personal preference. So if you do like that, maybe you will like this book, but I personally did not have a great time with it, and I gave it 2 stars. Then I read In the Shadow of Spindrift House by Myra Grant, and this was another fantasy horror. And in this one, we followed Harlow and 3 of her friends whose names I don't remember. And they used to be sort of teenage detectives. They actually helped their local police officers, detectives, figure out some crimes, some cases, and they are not really teenagers anymore. And some people from the group want to move on with their lives, go do other things, but other people like Harlow doesn't really want to move on. She wants to continue being a detective with her friends. And since they can't really agree on what to do, she decides to give them one last case to go out with a bang. And that is the mystery of Spindrift House. And basically, this house is there are a few families that want to know exactly which one of them owns the house, because the whole mystery about this house is that no one really knows who built it, so no one knows exactly who it belongs to right now. And so they have to go to the house to try to figure out the clues and discover who it belongs to. And again, let's start what I did like, which in this case was a lot more things. So I loved the writing, and I do tend to love the writing from this author, so that was not a surprise. I liked 3 out of the 4 characters. One of them I actually wanted to bash their heads into a wall, but maybe that was just me. And I really like the fantasy, magical, paranormal side of the story, which in this case was a lot. Now, the mystery, I figured it out pretty early on just from a sentence that Harlow either said or thought, as soon as they got to the house. But it's fine, it didn't really affect my enjoyment of the story. Now, what I didn't like as much was the fact that I didn't feel like it was really horror. At least 95% of the book, I wasn't uncomfortable or scared or creeped out or anything. It was just a fun fantasy story, which is fine, but not what I was here for. But overall, it was fun. I had a good time with it, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Next, I read The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher, and this was another horror book. And in this one, we followed a mouse who was not her actual name. It was her nickname, but honestly, I have no idea what her name was, because she was always referred to as Mouse. So we follow Mouse, and her grandmother passed recently, so she goes to her grandmother's house, who was a hoarder. So there are just boxes and boxes and piles of stuff in the house everywhere, and she's trying to basically clean out the house. And she finds a journal who actually belongs to her step-grandfather. And in that journal, he describes some really weird, creepy things. And then she starts experiencing those really weird, creepy things. And honestly, I felt very uncomfortable and unsettled and creeped out the whole time, because the descriptions in this book were so good. They were so creepy and detailed, and I loved it. And also, I really liked the main character and another character as well who was with her throughout most of the story. I really like them, and the main character, like, her thoughts were so funny because she basically coped with her fear with humor, and I absolutely love that. And since I actually really liked the character, I was pretty stressed and anxious and worried when anything was like about to happen to her. So, like, in this case, I really cared. And also, like, I really like the plot itself. It was scary, it was fun, and the pacing was also really good. And like, this book was pretty close to perfection to me, and so I give it 4.5 stars. And next, I read Empire of the Vampire, which I also have a reading vlog for with spoilers. So if you want to hear my thoughts with spoilers, I will link it. And this is the first book in the Empire of the Vampire series, possibly trilogy. And I have been wanting to read this book for a while because it is pretty, but I was saving it for October because vampires. And so, in this book, we follow Gabriel, who is sort of a vampire hunter with a twist. And basically, the whole book is just Gabriel telling his life story to a vampire called Jean-Francois. And Jean-Francois is like writing down the story and also making some drawings, which were gorgeous. And basically, Gabriel, like I said, he's a vampire hunter, but he is half vampire, half human, and he is part of a whole group of people like that who hunt vampires. And also in this world, some years ago, the sun was covered by shadow, and that was called Day's Death, I want to say. And that basically allowed the vampires and creatures to basically like roam free through the world. And there might be a way to undo that, which is also part of the plot of this book. And honestly, I didn't love it, and that might be because I didn't like Gabriel at all. And we had over 700 pages just following him, and not once did I care. Like, I understand what the author was trying to do with this character, because this type of character, like Gabriel's personality, that type of character has worked for me in the past, but for Gabriel, it really didn't. And there was one character who I actually kind of cared about, but not enough to be like actually sad or worried if anything were to happen to them. And like the main plot, I found it actually interesting, but I feel like there were a lot of long, slow, unnecessary scenes, or like I said, maybe that's just because I didn't want to be following Gabriel for such a long time. And you know, since vampire is a word in the title, I thought we were gonna follow vampires, like learn about them, follow them, have a lot of vampires, but it was just following Gabriel hating vampires, which, you know, I guess, but also I wanted more vampires because I love vampires, and I thought that's what I was gonna get with this book, and I didn't. So that was disappointing, and maybe if I had actually read the synopsis before starting to read this book, maybe I wouldn't have been disappointed, but I just wanted to read it for the aesthetics, to be honest, because it is gorgeous. And I mean, on the good side, there were a lot of like really good fight scenes, which I really appreciated. And like I said, it's beautiful, but apart from that, I didn't really love it. I mean, I didn't hate it either, like it was fine, but for a 700-page book, like that takes long to read, I wanted more than just fine, you know? But yeah, anyway, I gave it 3 stars, and I probably will not continue with the series. Okay, moving on. The next 4 books are actually part of another vlog, so I will also link it. And the first one was Wake the Bones, which was a fantasy sort of horror and also one of my anticipated releases for this year. And in this book, we followed Laurel, who dropped out of college to move back into her hometown to go help with her family's tobacco farm. And she also, like 3 of her friends also help out at the farm, and we also follow them. And I want to say they were called Isaac, Ricky, and Garrett. And some weird things start happening around the farm, and they try to, you know, figure out what exactly is causing them, but they can't really find out. And also, I forgot to mention, Laurel has some sort of magical abilities. She can like touch bones and see or feel whatever the animal that the bones belong to saw or felt. And after some more investigation, they find out that the evil around the farm is a devil, which is in the synopsis, so that's why I'm saying it. And basically, the whole book is them trying to figure out how to get rid of that devil. But, I mean, not the whole book, because there is a whole other thing going on that is just focusing on the characters' personal issues. And that made it feel a lot like a contemporary, which is not a type of book that I tend to read because it's just not my favorite type of book. And so even though we got so much of the characters' personal problems, personal lives, what was going on with them, I never really cared about any of them. And like I kept wondering if their personal issues were actually going to affect the fantasy paranormal part of the story, the horror part of the story, but it didn't. So I didn't get the points. Or maybe I am just a cold-hearted person who does not care about anybody. You know, maybe that's why, but I really did not connect to any of them or care. Like if anything bad was going to happen to them, I did not care one bit. And even like the horror parts, the whole other story, I was not very interested about it. I was not connecting to it either. I wasn't really processing the information a lot of times. Like I was reading and then like I would have to stop because I realized that I'm not actually processing anything of what I'm reading and I would have to go back like pages. So that was not exactly what I would call fun, and I give it 2 stars. Okay, so next I read Stolen Tongues, which was another paranormal horror. And in this one, we followed Felix and Faye, and they are celebrating their engagement at a cabin in the mountains. And then weird things start happening, like they start hearing and seeing people and movements and things around their cabin. And also, like, actually, before they got to the cabin, we had a prologue, which was years prior, and that was also really creepy because it had, like, you know, animals sensing things, and it was really, really scary, actually. And this whole book was pretty scary because I feel like the descriptions were so vivid and horrifying, and, you know, it was horror. And I don't really want to give anything away because this book will be so much better if you go into it knowing nothing, which was what I did. But basically, like, it got to a point where the characters, and therefore me, couldn't really trust anything or anyone in, like, the whole world. So that was also terrifying. And yeah, like, the whole book was really creepy, really unsettling, really scary, and I absolutely loved it. Also, the audiobook was also pretty scary, so really good. And yeah, this book was great. I had a great scary time with it. I absolutely loved it, and I gave it 5 stars. Okay, next I read We Need to Do Something, which was a horror novella. And in this one, we follow Mel and her family, so her parents and her younger brother, who are stuck in a bathroom. And they are all stuck in a bathroom because there was a tornado alert, and the bathroom was the place they found to basically protect themselves, keep themselves safe from the tornado. And so they're all there, and apart from the tornado going on, we know that Mel is also stressing out about something that happened before she got home. And at first we don't know what it is, and when you learn it, I was just like, what the fuck? And like in the beginning, when the tornado was going on, it was obviously scary because it's a tornado, but I was just like, yeah, okay, it's fine, but you know, I'm not here terrified. But then it got really weird, really disgusting, really just strange, crazy, deranged. And that's when I really started to love this book. And like we got to a point where neither the characters nor obviously I knew what was real, like what was actually happening and what wasn't, like what was actually just their imagination because they were all losing their minds. And yeah, like the book ended without me knowing what actually happened and didn't, because like the narrator was not exactly reliable because like I said, all of them I feel like lost all sense of reality. But that was really fun, and it all definitely made it creepier, scarier, and yeah, this book was really weird. Really, really weird. But I tend to like really weird horror, so it really worked for me. And once again, I won't say anything like of what happened, any details, because the best way to enjoy this book is just being like, what the fuck is happening every 5 seconds. So yeah, it was really fun. I absolutely loved it. And I also gave this one 5 stars. Next, I read Tender is the Flesh, and this was a dystopian horror. And in this world, basically, animals were all infected with a virus that was fatal to humans. So there are no more pets, there are no more animals for food. And now humans eat other humans who are just bred for that whole purpose of being food. And we follow Marcos, who works sort of like at the slaughterhouse for humans, basically, and he shows us around all these steps of the process of basically getting the meat ready for the consumer and just new things that exist now because of that. And also he is gifted one of the, like, a woman from one of those humans who are bred for consumption, and he doesn't really know what to do with her. And I mean, this book was certainly disturbing, like the concept was certainly disturbing, but I feel like we had a lot of world building and not a lot of plot. Like, we were moving around a lot, going to see many different places, learning how the world worked, but I feel like we were moving without a clear purpose. And I get that maybe the point of this book was to just show the world, show how weird, disturbing it was. But I tend to like books that are more like action, stuff happening, moving faster. And so this wasn't really the book for me. I have to say though that the ending was crazy, and I actually loved it because it's the kind of ending I love in horror stories. So yeah, the ending was great in my opinion, but the rest of the book I didn't love like I thought that I would, and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Actually, the next three books are all horror novellas, and the first one was Petrified Women, and in this one we followed Harley, who is dating a guy who is a prankster, and he loves to prank everybody, especially Harley, and they have sort of like a list of pranks, like ranked, and she wants to get like a high ranked prank. So she decides that on his birthday, she's gonna break into his house and just hide and prank him, scare him. And so she breaks into the house where he, by the way, carves like life-size wooden sculptures of women, which are creepy, by the way. And Harley, like, she has gotten used to them, but she's still creeped out by them. And so she gets there, she breaks into the house, she hides what she has to hide, she hides herself. And so her boyfriend gets home and he obviously doesn't know that she's there. And she starts seeing a whole other side to her boyfriend that she didn't know existed. And this book stressed me out. It was very anxiety inducing. I was stressed the whole time. And honestly, like, there was a point where I didn't really know what was true and what wasn't, which only made me more stressed. And it was like really short. It was only around 90 pages. And I feel like it was the perfect length for this story because it was short, it was quick, it was effective. I was scared, I was stressed, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I really liked the ending as well. Like, the ending was pretty cool, and I gave this one 5 stars. Now, the next horror novella was Cirque, Berserk, and this was set in an abandoned amusement park, which was called Cirque Berserk. And basically it was abandoned because 30 years before the main story is happening, some teenagers went on a killing spree. And there are like conflicting accounts because some people say that after going on a killing spree, all those teenagers killed themselves and that was that. Other people say that their bodies were actually never found, so they may be out there. And then some people say that there were 3 of them, some people say that there were 4. So a lot of conflicting accounts. And in the present storyline, we follow a group of teenagers, high school seniors, who I think just got out of their prom but are still thinking like, the night is young, let's do more things. And they decide to go to the abandoned amusement park because why not? And they get there and things start happening. And this book was a slasher, but it had a element, I guess, that made it different from other slashers. And I was actually pretty invested in the story. And once again, I think this was really the perfect length for this story. And it was really, really fun. I had a great time with this book and I gave it 4 stars. And now the 13th and last book I read, which was also a horror novella, was called Crossroads. And in this book, we followed Chris, whose son died 2 years ago in a car accident. And she goes to visit the spot where the accident was every day. And then one day she had a cut on her hand, I want to say, and she, like, a drop of blood fell onto the ground. And then that night she started having like visions of her son. And so she went back there and started like giving more offerings to be able to have the visions of her son, but it couldn't just be any offerings. It had to be personal. And also, not really sure if it was actually her son she was seeing. And the gore and body horror in this book were actually pretty intense. And I usually don't get like squeamish from any of that, but I actually did in some scenes from this book, which was great. And also, there was such a precious character in this book that I was just like in love with, and he just didn't deserve anything bad to ever happen to him. And also, this book was so sad. And yeah, this book just made me feel stressed, uncomfortable, sad, just overall horrible, which I guess is what I want from a horror book. And the ending was intense as well, and it was crazy. And just like the other novellas, they are all very short, so I'm not gonna get into any details, but I really enjoyed it. But just be ready to be sad in this book because it is devastating. But I love it and I gave it 4 stars. So I would say that this month was overall pretty successful and I read a lot of horror, which made me very, very happy. And yeah, those were the 13 books I read in October, and that is everything for this week's video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, give it a like and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!